Hello again. Now, today we're going to look at a very unique set of 8 old buildings. As usual, there's a story about what they were, but we're going to look at how accurate that might be, just from looking at the evidence. We're talking about what have been called battery forts, built, we're told, in the very early 1800s as part of the defence network to protect the country from Napoleon's predicted invasion. The story is that they provided coastal defence by having these howitzer 24-pound cannons mounted on top of these. They had a range of approximately 1 mile at the time, and as soon as Napoleon's ships arrived, they'd zap them with these. There were 6 of these structures on the Shannon estuary, one on the River Shannon between Loughree and Lough where seafaring ships were very unlikely ever to reach, and the final one is, even more strangely, in the middle of the Burren. The layout and shape of these 8 sites is identical, and they all have 3 features in common. The first feature, looking here at the overhead view, is what we'll call the flat side, and this is always perfectly aligned with a local historic site, energy hotspot, usually places we've seen already in these other videos, already linked to each other. For example, here at Dunaha, the flat side aligns perfectly with the round tower at Scattery Island, just a few kilometres away. And at Kilkerran Point, across the way from Tarbert, the flat side there aligns perfectly with Hag's Head Tower. The second thing that all these sites have in common is what we'll call the centre line. Now, as per this blue line in this overhead image, this centre line always also aligns with a prominent other location. For example, the centre line from Tarbert aligns perfectly with O'Brien's Tower, and the centre line at Kilkerran aligns perfectly with the octagonal tower on top of the church at Newport. The third thing that all these sites have in common is that around the centre line, centred on the centre line at an angle of 51.85 degrees, we'll call it 52 degrees. This is what you see here from the red indicators on this overhead image. And these red lines link these sites together and link them to prominent other historic sites in all cases. Let's look at the detail of the few of them. This is Dunaha. The flat side aligns with the round tower at Scattery Island. The centre line points to the centre point on a ring fort a short distance to the north. And our 52-degree lines point us to Slinehead Lighthouse and Glenina Castle. Now, let's add Tarbert to this diagram. As we said, the centre line at Tarbert points to O'Brien's Tower, and our 52-degree lines point to Slinehead Lighthouse again, and Roscam Round Tower. So we already have a geometric connection between these 2 sites, which in theory shouldn't be necessary in order to fire cannonballs at ships. Next one we'll look at is at Kilkerran Point, and we'll see how that is connected to Tarbert. As we've said, Kilkerran's flat side aligns with Hag's Head Tower, the centre line aligns with the spire at Newport, and our 52-degree lines align with the island at Roslara Lake and the octagon in the garden at Kilfrush House in County Limerick. This is the same octagon, if you remember from the Loop Head Lighthouse video. One of the boundary walls at Loop Head is aimed at this octagon also. Anyway, back to the Kilkerran diagram again. The line from Kilkerran to Kilfrush octagon has on the way a little field in Labashida, and that's what links it to Tarbert. It's an almost square, high-walled little field, and the intersection point, the red dot on this overhead image, is also on the yellow line which extends to the flat side at Tarbert. And, incidentally, if we put a green line through the centre axis of this little field, That green line points us directly to Ratu Round Tower just across the river. There's the satellite image of Ratu, and along the way that green line goes through the centre of Ringfort on the shoreline there near Labashida. There's the line drawing again, and as always the 52 degree angles are perfect. Why 52 degrees? Now, in all areas of engineering and power transmission and reception, there appears to be a sweet spot at 52 degrees. And it's an angle that has cosmic implications. For example, if we take to scale the diameter of the Earth, sit the moon on top, put a triangle in there like so, then we find that it has an angle of 51.85 degrees. And builders of big stuff have always known this. Looking at the pyramid, the angle of inclination of the sides is 51.85. Mathematically, it's a very conspicuous number. Its tangent, sine, and cosine all coincide with precise multiples and fractions of pi and phi. If we look at energy transmission and reception and antenna design, for example, the optimum antenna design parameters will always include a half power bandwidth at an angle of 52 degrees. Here we have the spec sheet for a specific antenna, which claims that it has a half power beam width of 54 degrees as compared to the optimum design value of 52. There's the power graph, and there's where the 52 degree angle comes from. There's a spec sheet for a different model of antenna. Again, the half power beam width is at 52 degrees. There's a radar and microwave antenna operating at much higher frequencies, and again, our half power beam width is 52 degrees. There we have a radio antenna for a car. The standard sitting angle for these, what they call bee-sting antennas, is 52 degrees. There's a selection of them from a different supplier, again, all 52 degrees. This also applies to other areas of engineering. This is the spec for the valve seat in an internal combustion engine. Looking at the spec for cutting this valve seat, the angle of approach and the angle at which the gas would be entering the cylinder is at 52 degrees. Now, I mentioned one of these sites was in the Burren. We're talking about Lismacshíada, a few kilometres inland from Ballyvaughan. It's in this valley, and there's just the foundations of the structure left. But it has the flat side, it has the centre line, and relevant sites at 52 degrees. I initially included Lismacshíada in this group of structures because the centre line from the site at Scattery Island goes directly to Lismacshíada and is one side of the 52 degree angle there. The other side goes to Inisheer Lighthouse, and the centre line at Lismacshíada points us directly to Donegal Castle. The flat side at Lismacshíada, at exactly 90 degrees to the Donegal Castle line, takes us to a Crannog at Loch George near Corofin. The Crannog, which interestingly has a diameter of 62 feet, which is 1 second of meridian arc at this latitude, indicating we are dealing with some sort of energy resonance. Now, you might ask, why am I thinking energy in relation to these sites? It's because of where they're located. There's a map of the Shannon Estuary and the location of the 6 sites that are there. And there's a scientific publication, a paper called Renewable Energy, published by Elsevier recently in 2022, dealing with tidal stream energy potential in the Shannon Estuary. And some of the graphs are very interesting. There's a lot of very complex maths in there that's above my pay grade, but the paper is looking at hydrokinetic energy. And these maps indicate where the hydrokinetic energy is concentrated. Because of the contours of the riverbed, then the water flow is very active in 3 specific areas highlighted here in the brighter colours. And if we add in the locations of our battery forts, we find that one after the other there's a pattern. They're concentrated directly either side of the areas of peak hydrokinetic energy in the water. And in flowing or falling water, a lot is happening in terms of molecular bonds being stressed and energies, voltages being generated and very quickly dissipating. So the question is, were these sites some kind of power stations which were able to capture this energy and retransmit it? The site at Keelog up in the River Shannon between Loughree and Lough would also have a concentrated flow of water right in front of it, in the order of 150 cubic meters per second. And at Lismacchiada you could also have very active water flows, but underground. And we know that underground flowing water has energy implications on the surface. Diviners can easily detect it, and it's known that energy disturbances will occur if you build a house directly on top of it. In the context of large amounts of moving water, the Shannon Estuary is the number 1 site in the country. The number 2 site in the country where you would have similar water movements would be Lough Swilly, and there are a number of elaborate similar sites. Different layout, but similarly elaborate on Lough Swilly. So if you have any thoughts on any of this, please do let me know. If you want to explore it further yourselves, I'll quite happily send you the Google Earth KML file. And thank you for watching.